So my friend Anthony Kasper, he's the composer of the theme song that you will hear at the beginning of this episode. Is Anthony Kasper, DJ Anthony Kasper. He speaks very highly of you.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know why. I don't know you.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
We're here on the Wedge Live podcast with mayoral candidate Jazz Hampton.
Thrilled to be here. Excited.
I'm your host, John Edwards. We're about to take a bike ride. We're here at the Lake Harriet Bandshell in beautiful Ward 13, right on the shores of Lake Harriet.
Yeah.
You ready to go?
Can't wait.
Okay, let's
do
go.
it. See how my asthma holds up.
Is that a problem biking?
Depends on how steep the hill is, you know.
Okay.
But I'll be good.
Let's talk about Jazz Hampton. Why are you running for mayor? Why in 2025? It's not a great time to be an elected official. I have said for years now to everyone I talk to. So
Yeah.
why do it?
You know, I've seen the cycle of gridlock that our city's been stuck in. Too much tension between the desires of the residents and then also the city council and the mayor's office. And I think there's a great time to more than bridge that gap, but actually get people at the table and move things forward. And I'm a person where, regardless of your ideology in the city of Minneapolis, I see a lot of value in the things that everyone's trying to get done, and I just want to move that forward. And then also on top of that, my personal experience, my professional experience, my educational experience, I think also puts me in the position to tackle the most important issues in our city too.
Do you think we've reached the point where, so you spoke about this a little bit in your Racket interview, about how you want people to vote for you and not against someone else.
Yeah.
But also, like, we need to reach the point where people are done with Jacob Fry in order to move on. I don't think the first decision people make is, I love any of these candidates. The first decision is going to be, I'm ready to move on. I'm done with this. And then I need to find someone acceptable. Like, do you think we've reached the point where we're done with Mayor Fry?
Earning multiple terms, especially a third term in Minneapolis, means that you've done a really great job. You know, if you're a head coach of a basketball team in the NBA, you got to be making the playoffs in order for us to say, well, let's renew this contract.
Yeah.
And I think people are ready for, a change of leadership in that same way. And I think also, I agree, it's the first step. Then they have to find a candidate that they're excited about after deciding we need new leadership. Just like if you might be sick of the coach, but if there's no other coaches available that you think are going to do a better job, you might not want to switch at that point. And I think the city's there, and I think the approval ratings, both in 21 and now, kind of speak to that.
Are you learning anything on the campaign? Anything that has surprised you?
There's people who desire, we just heard one person say it, they desire to feel safer. And I feel like the city of Minneapolis is safe, but here's the big difference. What I've learned and what I've felt is, even if, let's say, property crimes, violent assaults, whatever the case may be, if those numbers have stayed the same, hypothetically, people feel like the response to it might not be the same. And I think that's how people tangibly are feeling that issue.
You showed up at the federal, I'm going to call it a raid.
I was going to say, at least you're naming it first, so.
You showed up at Lake and Bloomington when the feds were out, and it was apparently a drug bust, human trafficking related. Like, they didn't find anything there. And they showed up like soldiers. Some of the ICE agents were masked. Yeah. And it became a thing where the mayor was attacking people who were raising a fuss, like, tone down the rhetoric kind of thing. And I'm thinking, I live in the United States of America in 2025, and we see masked federal agents on streets, yanking people off the street, sending them to a gulag in Central America. And I'm thinking, no, I think it's okay for council members to let people know what's happening. Like, I just wish we had a mayor who could maybe focus his fire on the federal administration and not get bogged down in feeling defensive about people concerned about why MPD was there. I think he went right to the defense mode, and I don't know. Why did you go down?
I went down because I was actually leaving a meeting, talking to some folks in downtown Minneapolis about how we can make downtown vibrant. And as soon as I stepped out, I had 3 or 4 screenshots of that same screenshot of, I don't even know who the person who posted on Facebook originally was, and said, hey, this is happening. We don't know what's going on. So I canceled the meeting that I was going to, and I just drove straight there. Because I wanted to see. There's not a, every major protest I can think of in the recent years I've likely been at, and I don't think that one would have been any different. And when I went down there, I was shocked to see the level of equipment and personnel there.
Yeah.
And if I'm being I want to be really clear about that whole day. When I saw that, I thought this couldn't possibly be about immigration. That was one of my first thoughts. I was like, there's no way. Even the rhetoric that's being pushed from the federal government wouldn't warrant all of these ATF, FBI, all of these folks. I mean, and I could go, we could bike for 3 hours and I could talk about what I saw that day. But what I know is I did see ICE. I did see FBI, ATF, the ATF, all of them. And it was scary. And I think to your point about the response to it, I think nationally we're seeing this like fear about immigration, right? And people are really scared, their families being torn apart. But on a local level, we have had really bad history with relationship with law enforcement. And so that's also a part of this conversation as well. It's compounding in that way.
Right.
And we saw that in the result of what happened when people went down there. If you think of that press release after George Floyd was killed, we saw what it read, and it's not what actually had happened. And so in our being, they bumped that car. Did you see that?
Oh no. I guess we got that on video. We'll send that to their insurance.
We'll get the plate. And so that's built into our DNA. So of course that's going to be a part of the reaction to seeing that as well. And I think that's legitimate.
So Brian O'Hara has gotten into, I've wanted to like Brian O'Hara since he got here as chief of police. In a case, did you follow that case where the guy was exonerated? He was in St. Paul at a grocery store on security camera footage, but he got convicted in 2012 for a murder that happened in Minneapolis. An improbable distance for him to have traveled.
Right.
Did you follow that case?
No, not to this level of detail.
He was exonerated, and Brian O'Hara came out and was like, no, that was a good case. Basically saying he shouldn't have been exonerated. And he does things like that. There was the Davis Maturi shooting where he made some statements that I found offensive.
Yeah.
And so I want to like him, and so my fan fiction about Brian O'Hara is that he says ridiculous things because he needs to impress the rank and file, he needs to impress the police union. Maybe that's not true. Right. But that's a thing I've heard other people say.
Yeah, I do think being in his position, and you said a version of, I want to think the best of him, and I truly, in a lot of places, but especially in public work that folks are doing, I do give people the benefit of the doubt and think their intentions are good. And I extend that to everyone as a baseline. It could change from there. And yeah, I think straddling the line of being a defender of your colleagues and coworkers when you're the boss, right? I've felt that before. But also, this is just one of the highest levels of importance of communication. And so any gaffe that can be made or misstep that can be taken is just going to have all eyes on it, and people's view of you is going to change dramatically because of that. And I think to kind of the beginning of your point, that's kind of what has happened a few times with him. And then also you can get jaded when people start being a jerk to you because of that, right? And I think it's a cycle of issues that is pervasive then.
You're going to have to deal with that as mayor. If you win, you're boss of police. And I feel like Jacob Frey, any mayor grapples with this. like I have to support the police because I'm afraid they're gonna quit on me, like between the lines.
Right.
Like we have seen MPD quit. We've seen them play politics with council members in the past, even before George Floyd was murdered. And so how do you play politics with the police, deal with the public and the community's distrust of police? Because it feels like a lot of times our leaders are playing, I feel like they have to satisfy the police, so they have us over the barrel because staffing is so low. How do you balance dealing with both of those constituencies?
You know, in our current organization, my day job, we have employees and contractors, and there's so many people that you're managing all at one time as a team. And I think this transfers really well to that, where it's, if something happens and something goes wrong, you have to be honest about that, right? You have to say, hey, this shouldn't have happened. This is against policy. They shouldn't have said that, but also be able to say, but that doesn't define this person's character or make them a bad person. If it's repetitive and consistent, then now it becomes a character trait rather than something that happened. And so you have to be honest when people do things wrong and say that was wrong, but I have full faith in this person going forward, or I don't think that this is a consistent characteristic. I don't know, I've done things in my life that were stupid, and I've said stupid things for sure, but that doesn't mean that is my overall characteristics or my personality at all times. Just like doing one good thing doesn't mean you're a good person, right? And I think there has to be more transparency in that, and able to say like, oh, he shouldn't have said that. That was, and I'm not talking about him specifically now. Oh, that person shouldn't have said that, or that was stupid, or that's against our policies, but we'll work on it. And that hasn't happened enough in our leadership.
What are your transportation routines? How do you get around the city?
Because I have to get places quickly, I wish I took my bike places as much as I used to. I drive a Volkswagen ID4, and I don't have a charger at my house, which is a unique situation. My wife doesn't love that. And so usually what I do, let's say if I'm going to my office, I'll drive to Boom Island and I'll park there. And then I charge my car there, and then I walk to work, which is like, another half mile or so from there, a mile maybe.
Look at you parking a half mile from where your destination
that's
is.
That's my exercise.
How do you survive?
Oh my good. I will say, and this is a little embarrassing, I have an electric scooter and on rush days, I'll throw that in the trunk too. So then I can electric scooter a little quicker from my car to the office.
Multimodal.
Yeah. So that's, and I'm on pickup duty for my kids after, our youngest after work. So going straight there to do pickup, and got to be able to be mobile enough for that.
So again, referring to your racket interview,
yeah,
I feel like you had really good answers on like infrastructure and transportation. And I'm wondering, do you come to that naturally? Have those always been your thoughts on, for example, you're like, I wish people, I'm paraphrasing you, like I wish people would focus on the improvements we're making, the fact that we're upgrading infrastructure instead of complaining about the couple of months where the road is blocked. Like you wish people took a positive attitude. And so I'm wondering, do you have advisors who have educated you on stuff like that? Or is that just like a worldview you have had for a while?
Listen, I in my life, if that, like generally, not specific to that, I don't know. I think that I have had a pretty damn good life. And so I think whenever things are going wrong or things are going bad, I'm always like, yeah, but like a lot of stuff is going really well right now. Life generally is good. And I subconsciously take that into a lot of things. But specifically to transportation, yeah, I've talked to a lot of folks that have worked in this space. I've talked to folks that have done it on the city and state level, but also on the federal level. And you have to understand that, we'll be upset if the pipes burst or if there's lead in our water if we don't do the public works stuff. But we're also upset if you take a month and a half to fix that problem as well. And so to me, the big thing is communicating why we're doing it so people can appreciate and understand that it's not just to disrupt your life, it's to improve something that we need to be improved.
Oh, another thing you said, you were like, this is on your website, about
I love this research.
Let's remove some pavement and plant some trees. And I'm thinking that's nice.
Look, at the end of the day, when people come and visit Minnesota, Yeah, like they'll see the bike pass and know that it's valuable and it's great, and they'll see our public transportation and they'll see the lakes, but they want to see the green space, and that's what people talk about so much. My brother is married and lives in Arizona, and his wife will come up and she's like, wow, it's just so much green everywhere. And that's just viewing. That's not the benefit that having more green space in a city also gives from a health perspective, from an environmental perspective, and all those things. And I think, you know, it's one thing to remove stuff. It's another, like, to remove trees and put concrete there. And it's another thing to, you know, implant more trees where they might not have been recently.
Well, the big question there when you're removing pavement is whose pavement are you going to remove, whose parking gets sacrificed. That's the eternal controversy in local politics. It's not crime, it is parking. And so when there's an infrastructure project that comes up and you think it's great, let's modernize this city and make it easy to get around, however you want to. How do you deal with the parking controversies and the people who say this is going to close my business? Very sincerely come to you and say, my business can't survive without this parking. How do you settle those debates?
The assumption, I wouldn't want to give the implication I'm saying the concrete we're taking up is in uptown on one of the drivable roads that needs to be open to businesses like we're seeing right now. I think there's a lot of spaces outside of that, whether it's directly in or adjacent to parks that can already have some of that being done. And also, again, to communication. If you aren't, I talked to a business owner earlier this week, and they were like, there was a project happening in front of our building, a restaurant, and they told us it'd be 10 weeks, and it turned out to be 6 months. And it was our first year of being open as a restaurant, and we had to take out an additional loan for that reason. Like, that is direct impact to a restaurant that's trying to be a part of a community, and I don't want to do that. I don't think that's helpful. And I think there's ways to incentivize ourselves to get it done better, or to at least communicate and plan for businesses struggling in that way too.
So the bike route that we were just on, the Bryant Avenue thing, that was very controversial as it was being planned and put in. But I think it's beautiful, and I don't hear people complaining anymore. Let's take a left onto the Greenway here.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna assume you would have supported it. Tell me if you didn't, or you think we shouldn't have put it in.
You know, I think, like a lot of things, sorry, I'm just gonna make sure we don't crash in this moment. I'm happy with it now, without a doubt. And here's the thing, I think there's a fair debate right now around additional bike lanes and additional stuff. If we're ranking in the top of the nation for bikeability, for bike lanes, for all that stuff in a city and state that is snowing a lot, granted people still bike in the winter, I think we've done a good job in the space. Of course, then the desire to disrupt businesses or people's parking for their homes or other things, that willingness to disrupt that is lower now because we're in such a good place. But it doesn't mean that I'm not willing to have that conversation around it, for sure.
Oh no, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that level of skepticism from reading your website on transportation. I felt like I was reading full-throated support of bike infrastructure on the website.
Well, I mean, we're using the great infrastructure right now, and I'm happy that we have it, and I want to improve it, like, without a doubt. But that doesn't mean at all costs. It means that we have to, like all the projects we do, we have to be intentional about asking people their input and getting feedback from them. And like that restaurant owner that I just talked to, saying, what will this mean and how could we help you in the interim during that process?
So Bryant Avenue only goes north-south in one part of the city. And so I think, I haven't polled the people who live on Bryant Avenue. It's so much nicer from my perspective than it was before. And like, there are other streets in the city that I would hope would welcome that change.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be controversy. All these people are going to be opposing change. And
yep, for sure.
So I think we need to push through that and maybe not say, well, we're the top biking city or one of the top and we can rest on our laurels.
Yeah.
So I think there's a whole network that we need to build out. And these are improvements that benefit everyone. Even if you're driving, you're a little bit safer on a street like Hennepin Avenue after the reconstruction because of the improvements we've made.
For sure. That's the conversation, though, that needs to be had. And and this isn't just transportation, it seems like on every topic, people are like, no more bike lanes, or we need more bike lanes, and it's entrenched in a camp, and if you say the other thing, then you're a bad person. And I'm being a little hyperbolic, but you know.
No, I think you're accurately characterizing the debate there.
If random fun fact that I want to share. This is the house I lived in when it was my second and third year of law school.
Here in East Isles?
This building right here. And you know the rarity, those are 12 parking spots, or 6 parking spots back there in a garage.
Oh, it looks like a warehouse.
Yeah, and it's those 4, it's a quadplex, and we were the top left unit up there. Oh, I loved it, and I definitely used the Greenway a little more back then. I also had a dyno comp at the time, so I was riding around a BMX bike around the city.
Okay.
So, different times.
How many years did you spend in Uptown?
2 years in that house, and then I don't think we consider it Uptown, but like around, oh my gosh, my address, 821 Douglas, which is kind of behind Birch.
Right,
What
in
was
Lowry
Birch?
Hill?
Yeah, Lowry Hill was the next stop. Between those two, I was at Lake Calhoun Flats for 2 years, or a year or two as well. That was immediately after graduating law school, I think. So I lived in Uptown for 4 or 5 years.
Is Uptown coming back? Do you spend a lot of time in Uptown today?
I mean, you look at Mike Nortonsby, there's always something lovely happening in Uptown. Yeah, I think it's one thing I get a little frustrated with when people say that we need to return Uptown and downtown to what they used to be.
Right.
And I hear their intention as it needs to be vibrant, it needs to be active, we want to see people there. I don't think it needs to be a Western bar, a rooftop bar, and 3 other whatever different flavors of bar. I think it should be something different that the community actually wants and what pulls people to that community. But I think we're on the way. I definitely think we're better than we were a few years ago.
How do you diagnose the problem with Uptown? Because a lot of people will say, well, it's simply the lack of free parking. I can't park out front. They put in that bike lane. The truth is there's a lot of parking still there. I think it's plenty. And I don't know that that's why that explains the decline. But like, how do you explain what's happened and what do we need to do to come back?
You know, when people say things that are statistically or factually not true, again, I'm coming from a place of assuming good intent. I think that means they haven't been made aware. And so I think there's a spark that needs to occur consistently within Uptown, where events where we're like, this is where you park. This is the parking infrastructure that we have and you can be aware of. These are the restaurants and places you can go to. And I think more events where we can spark that will lead to it. And I think we're on a better track for doing that. And then also letting business owners who are hoping to open there have that as well. I think that has to be a part of the conversation too.
So my friend Anthony Kasper, he's the composer of the theme song that you will hear at the beginning of this episode is Anthony Kasper, DJ Anthony Kasper. He speaks very highly of you.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know why. I don't know you.
Yep.
Is that, also I've heard from other people who are like, oh, love jazz. People who know you personally. And I'm wondering, can you explain that? Why do people speak so highly of you? Is that an act?
I don't have enough money to pay them to do it, so that's first and foremost. Listen, I think we used to play a game in high school. It was like, what if you could be the best? If you had to rank yourself in the top 50 of anything in the world, Halo player, ability to bike down the Greenway at a top speed, like what were you best at? And I might be one of the most extroverted people in the world. And so I never shy away from making new friends and connections and all of that. And it's a weird thing where like, I don't know, this comes from, I think, my background of being biracial, spending half my life in public school and half in private school. I've seen a lot of different sides of the railroad tracks and a lot of perspectives. And that like, it drove a desire for me to like connect with people. So like I can sit down with any person who loves Bravo TV. I know more about it. I ride a Harley Davidson motorcycle and I speak French. All of those things are true, and that's what makes me, I love connecting with people. Like I'll be at any event and get to know someone and what they're interested in. I'm like, oh, I love that too, let's talk about it.
Is that genuine? Because I feel like our current mayor collects people. He tried to win me over. texted me and was super nice to me because he's like, not because I'm a constituent, but because here's a guy with a little bit of power. I think he's really good at the one-on-one of politics. It's one thing he's really strong at. And like, are you worried people are going to be skeptical of you? Like, oh, here's Jazz, Mr. Extrovert, just like our last mayor.
So my quick answer to that is I'm terrified of that.
Okay.
It's actually, I'm terrified of that because here's the thing, and this is where never having held elected office is something I hope is a positive thing for me in this conversation. I know Anthony Kasper from when we were, the last time I hung out with him was probably when we were 19 years old. I'm almost 35 now. I wasn't thinking about running for mayor back then. I made an impression on him as a person at that time. And that's the beauty of elected office. You can talk to anyone who knows me personally. And this is actually part of like a campaign I want to try to do on social media. And I want them to share how they feel about me. And none of it was when I ever considered being an elected official. So it wasn't for that reason. It never has been.
Oh,
You want to pull over?
Jazz, I think I've gotten us into the wrong direction here. I had forgotten that this was a one-way, so we're gonna have to go around the other way.
Let's do it. So genuinely, that's one of my biggest fears, is that my true personality comes across as a political character.
Right.
And it actually makes being in public and having conversations with me harder now. Because like, I have to wear a Jazz for Mayor button or a Jazz for Mayor hat.
Right.
And I would talk to that person standing next to me at the co-op if I had never been running for mayor.
Right.
And so how to navigate that and not make it feel disingenuous has been tough for me.
Something we didn't have 10 years ago in local politics was all these PACs.
Yeah.
And the mayor has 2 of them. There's another progressive one. The mayor's PACs are by far better funded.
Yep.
He's going to be the best funded candidate for mayor. Takes a lot of money. I feel like money was a factor in Emily Koski not continuing on. I don't know that for sure, but I think it was a factor.
Yeah.
Like, do you have enough money to win? How's your fundraising going, and like, how do you think about money as a factor?
I've said this before. Money is kind of like it's like what a GPA used to be on a resume when you're applying to a job.
Right.
It was kind of like, oh, well, if you don't have a 3.5, don't apply to this job. And you could have a 4.0, but it doesn't mean you're going to get the job. It's kind of like a table stakes in a lot of this conversation.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there's always a need to raise more money. I look at the reports from last year, and I think 3 people raised roughly $250, which collectively is how much, without PACs being involved, the mayor raised just about.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like it's table stakes, but also just to get in the room. The person with the 3.5 might get the job over the person with the 4.0, and the person that raises $250,000 might still also win this race. And like the Obama 08 campaign, I think there's a lot of things to do beyond money in this race to win.
What are those things?
I think it's any form of new media, right? It's this.
Okay.
It's your own social media channels. It's getting out and connecting with people. I always say that, like, sometimes it feels like politics is the only MLM that actually works. We're like, hey, will you tell 5 friends? And then they'll tell 5 friends.
Yeah.
And
then
that
the people at the very bottom lose big, right? The people at the top win. And
exactly. But I think that's the stuff that has to be done. And listen, I think that people are just hoping for someone that is competent and can win, and they want to put their support behind that person.
You talked a little bit about your asthma before we got started. Does that affect you physically? Frequently?
If anyone is listening to this podcast, if you come up to me and say, let me see your inhaler in the next 5 years, and I don't pull it out of my pocket, I'll give you $1. I'll Venmo you, I'll Cash App you. I always have it on me. I've had asthma my whole life. I used to be hospitalized like once, like in Children's Minnesota, like once a year when I was growing up. And I played sports. I was on the football team in college. So it's always affected me, but like a lot of other stuff, it's been my whole life, so I've gotten used to it.
We learned you don't like cats. You'd never heard of the Wedge Live Cat Tour. You're the only person in the city who has no idea what the Wedge Live Cat Tour is.
That's good news. That means every person in the city now knows. So that's a win. I'm a part of a big day now.
Yeah. How did you cloister yourself So what has been your local politics involvement? So how long have you been in Minneapolis?
So the thing I say a lot and I want to be clear about this, the thing I say a lot is like where we are right now. I live within 7 miles of where we're at right now for my entire life. Right. 3 or 4 of those years were in St. Paul in college when I went to the University of St. Thomas. 2 of those were literally just across 100 in St. Louis Park. But other than that, I've lived, and now all my other adult years I've lived within, the limits of the city. So like I've been involved, I've cared, I've been here for a really long time. But also, even when you're in those other cities, whether it's Richfield or St. Louis Park or St. Paul, I do feel like Minneapolis is the big brother. And you always look up to the big brother, I know I do in my family.
So the evil version of that are the people on Twitter. Twitter is a cesspool now, but like the volume of replies I get of people just like from other places, probably haven't been to Minneapolis in their whole lives.
Yeah.
Who seem to devote their entire online persona and their entire self-esteem to trashing Minneapolis.
Which is wild.
That's one of the things post George Floyd. Our city politics has become nationalized. It's definitely like a Minnesota issue.
Yeah.
And it really ramps up the hatred of the city.
Yeah.
I think it's I worry for people's safety, obviously. Just having a random Minneapolis council member be like on the lips of the most hardcore MAGA supporter as like the thing that is wrong with the country or the state, the thing that's an existential threat to their life, I feel like I don't like it.
And it's nerve-wracking to know that, I think even today the president was saying something about our local politics, whether it was state or city level. It's scary to know that there's that kind of rhetoric being built up, especially for people outside of the state and outside of the city, but especially the state. And honestly, that's why I think the posture even between our local leadership, that's what I am so excited about, is like simmering that down. I've sat down with I plan to sit down with them all. I've sat down with a handful of city council members. Some of which I don't agree with on every issue politically. And like my story to them is like, I promise you, I will sit down at this table with you every single time. And we might disagree, and we're gonna get to a place where we do agree. It just might take longer than it has in the past, but I guarantee I'll sit down. And there's that old saying, it's like, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, or how you made me feel when I leave that conversation. And that rhetoric issue has been difficult within our city leadership thus far, or recently, I should say.
Do you have thoughts about George Floyd Square? We've had several like very hard, difficult real estate conversations in the city. One of them is East Phillips Urban Farm, the Roof Depot site, the conversation about the 3rd precinct, but also George Floyd Square, where there are people in the community who want to open the street up, like the mayor has planned to do. There are people who want to pedestrianize it. Like, where do you come down on that? How do you think that conversation has gone?
I think it's interesting when elected officials, it's like, there's an difference between what I want and what the people most affected want. And as a lawyer, I also want to define people most affected. What does that mean? Does it mean partially tourists? Does it mean the people who live there? Does it mean the businesses that are there? And listen, I think that I have a view of what I would thought George Floyd Square would be 5 years later, and it's not there yet. But I want it to be reflective of what the community members want and those that have a lifelong impact connected to it want. And if that means closing it down sometimes, if that means letting a bus through, whatever that is, we just need to do what the community wants that can also honor the legacy of what happened. And this is another one of those things, like with whether it's Councilmember Jenkins isn't going to be there next year, but whether it's Councilmember Chavez or anyone else, like I'm excited to sit down and have these conversations because I think we're this close, but the conversation literally isn't happening anymore. It's stuck. It's dead in the water.
It's one of those where you reference this. Who is the community most affected? Because everybody's got debates in their neighborhood, maybe more mine than some others, where everyone is claiming to represent the community.
Yeah, right.
And like an elected official has to step in and say, I am mediating this, and in order to prevent this from going on literally forever, we need to make a decision.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people are thinking, like, it's time.
Yeah.
My impression is that I think, maybe this is not popular, I'm going to get canceled here.
Oh, can't wait.
I feel like the public engagement and the people who did it from the city, that was done in good faith for George Floyd Square. You can always wish they had talked to somebody different. You can criticize who they talked to, but yeah. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Liz, whatever the number is, $2-something million spent on engagement, asking people. My brother, who's the smartest of the family, my oldest brother, he does test questions and surveys for a living. It's what he does. And his favorite phrase to use in the entire industry is, don't ask people a question if you aren't ready for the answer. If you were going to say, hey, do you want to come back to work? And they're like, no.
Right.
And then you force them back to work. Well, you did that to yourself. If you're going to say, would you rather have it be a pedestrian walk or a bus lane? And they say something, now they're frustrated that you didn't do what they said. Right, and I think that is a lot of the feelings that are happening around the conversation. And that's why I think the Band-Aid has to be ripped off and we just have to ultimately make a decision for the city.
Do you have a position on rent control?
Rent control, the underlying issue is people can't afford to live where they want to live or where they have been living. Rent control is one tool to help that problem. I think there's other tools to help that problem that would have less negative effects, right? Whether it is improved legal protections and legal assets to individuals who are renting in that spot. If it's additional protections on complaints about a specific landlord. I think there's a lot of things that we can do that would be less detrimental for our need for additional affordable housing in the city. And obviously, every single person in this conversation will say, look at St. Paul. And that is an example of what we can look to of what could potentially happen in that situation. And I tend to take that viewpoint where that risk as the first tool after it wasn't as successful as we hoped it would be in St. Paul isn't the first tool that we should try to use on the problem that we all agree on, that is people can't afford to live where they are or hope to live.
It's kind of a maybe.
Yeah. On rent control?
Yeah. Like,
no, I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be
no?
our first choice on how to address people not being able to live in their spot.
Are there aspects of the policy you feel like that's a non-starter? Like definitely no?
I just think the burden even of prioritizing. I talked to a landlord in St. Paul and he was like, how do they even get my information? The people have to be aware of the policy and the amount that you can increase. And then the landlord makes that increase and then the complaint is made. And he's like, the tenants don't even know. So it's not even affecting them or helpful for them because they aren't even aware of what they could or should be doing in this moment. I just think the idea is a little better than the actual implementation.
So on your website, you talked about bringing the rent control work group, the city's rent control work group back together. What would be the point of that?
I think it's to find policies that aren't directly, as St. Paul did, a rent control mechanism that will stifle growth and development within our city. And I think, again, I alone, or even the 13 city council members alone, shouldn't be the only people having that conversation. You have to have additional stakeholders at the table that understand the implications that maybe you don't think of. At my job all the time, we just have working sessions where we're like, help me understand the risks that we aren't thinking of in going down this route. And that's the advantage of putting that group back together and doing that work.
You speak highly of the 2040 plan on your website, so I'm wondering where you would, if elected, you would be mayor while we are debating and possibly approving the 2050 plan. Anything you would want to see in that in terms of like housing and zoning reforms, transportation related stuff, or anything on your mind in that regard?
Yeah, I think one of the goals that I view, especially when we're thinking about downtown and uptown, is I want to support residential living from like the outside of downtown in. And what can we do from a zoning perspective to support that? I used to live, we didn't even talk about this, okay, I used to live in downtown Minneapolis above the CVS on it's 929 Portland, kind of like downtown east. And when I lived there, there was a coffee shop and a CVS, and both disappeared. And we had one baby and a dog, and the livability of the neighborhood kind of went away. And so I want to do things that incentivize that outside of downtown moving in residential vibe, and I think that is some mixed use opportunities we have there. I'm not talking about turning the IDS Center into a residential building, like that's the outside in perspective. And then also I think we have to keep in mind the property tax implications of the decisions that we're making. I talk a lot to people who their house might even be paid off and the property taxes continue to grow to a place where they feel like they can't age in place with dignity anymore. Yeah. And that has to be a part of like whatever we're trying to do at the same notion.
How do we solve that? How do we solve the budget woes, the revenue problem? You got any new taxes you want to push that ease the burden on property taxes?
I think there's a difference between like how do we get the water out of the boat and how do we plug the hole, and like we have to plug the hole like immediately. There's businesses that are leaving Minneapolis, whether they're talking about restaurants or companies downtown, and there's less people starting businesses in the city. And so we have to look at that and say, what are things that we can do to make sure they feel like Minneapolis is a welcoming place for their business? And I don't mean incentives to start specifically, but I mean they aren't fearful that the closure will be 4 times longer than they anticipated in front of their business and it will go under in the first year. That is some of the other stuff that I think we really have to put into works within the city. And here's the other thing, and to talk about being canceled, this will be my cancel moment. If if Target and US Bank and others leave downtown Minneapolis, like they already took City Center out and they have people in Brooklyn Center or Park or whatever, if that happens, like the tax burden is going to get worse. And I'm not saying we need to give Target a tax break in order to keep them here, but we need to be having the conversation to understand what we have to do to ensure that some of our anchors don't disappear as well.
Are you making a play to be the downtown council mayor?
No. I'm making a play to say if they leave, we are in a world of hurt that we're already feeling minor versions of. And so to pretend like that conversation shouldn't happen is disingenuous. But also, like beyond downtown, I'm talking about 38th and Pleasant, like business corridors in that same vein. We have to make sure that they don't feel like they have to leave. Because if they leave, it's the same thing that happened in my old apartment. Like if there's not a CVS and a coffee shop, I'm less likely to stay here as well.
Right. Why did you pick your current neighborhood?
I think one of the first things that people do when they go to Zillow is they look at school districts and what it means. And listen, my dad is black, my mom is white, my wife is white. I also know the statistics around reading comprehension and test scores for students of color in the city of Minneapolis. And it's funny, I know some people that will say, I chose a specific school so I could have a more diverse setting. And at the same time, I'm thinking, I want to choose a setting where I ensure that my child will have the best opportunities within the city of Minneapolis public school where my kids go. And so we looked at school, that was one of the first things. And then we looked at like the places that we like to go. We loved the Linden Hills Park. We love like the community feel of downtown Linden Hills. And listen, my parents, not to put their business on Front Street, but my parents bought a house when we were kids and they refinanced over and over and over again to put their kids through school, to take in 12 kids, one of which they legally adopted into their 1,300 square foot house beyond us 4 kids that they had. They did everything off of the equity of their home. And my wife and I had our home in St. Louis Park and we sold it. We had an opportunity because we had redone half of the house with her dad to move into a house where we thought we could have equity that could grow and help our family. And then live in a neighborhood that we love. And now that equity is what allowed me to start my business, which is a social justice based business to help people. And none of that is possible without being in a home that could allow me to do that.
Is there anything you came here today you were hoping we would talk about that we have not talked about?
I think that I get a little miffed or frustrated when people say, he's never held elected office, why mayor? And this next part is not to throw shade at anyone, but you graduate from a public policy master's degree at 26 years old, you work as an aide for a year or two, you become a city council member at 28, you're there for 4 or 6 years, now you're 34 and you're gonna run for mayor. That is the existence of your professional development in that time period.
Yeah.
And that is a different skill set than I'm on the Catholic Charities Board for over 5 years. Again, before I considered running for mayor because that's important. I am on the Great North Innocence Project Board and I've represented a man that was wrongfully incarcerated for 19 years. I'm on the Minneapolis Foundation Board trying to get dollars into the hands that need it the most at any given moment. I've been a public defender when I was in law school. I have been a practicing litigator for 7 or so years. And then I ran a business for 5 years, and I teach an entrepreneurial finance class at the University of St. Thomas. That is the experience I gained in that same time, where someone might have graduated from a public policy program and then worked within the city. And that experience is what allows me to talk to business owners and understand their needs. It's what allows me to understand the needs that we have in our education system within the city of Minneapolis. It's what allows me to have direct, informed information about how to attack the affordable housing work. And so, yes, I haven't held elected office before, but all of these things are the experiences that make me ready for that role.
Okay, Jazz Hampton, thank you for riding bikes with me around the lakes, and good luck.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
See you at the city convention.
No, and I'll see you at the Parade of Cats.
This is the cat tour. Are you coming to the cat tour?
When is it? Tell me the date so I can make sure.
Wednesday the 25th, next week.
Oh, next week.
6 p.m.
Yeah. I think there's a mayoral forum.
Oh, well, you could have had your face painted. We're having free face painting.
I'll just visit cats on my own time. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thanks for having me.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Jazz Hampton. This has been the Wedge Life Podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.